Hello YouTube, Mishka Valhalla here. So, if you're here for my last video was about how to find your sacred space, how to get in contact with the spirits and the gods of the land, so you may find that space, and what should it feel like, etc. So, this video will be about the subject of fate and Orlog, and how it works with the philosophy of karma, at least from my own understanding and from my own research. And of course, hand in hand, I will get into the concept of the runes and how they incorporate into fate and how they can be used for divination. So, without any further ado, we shall begin. So the runes, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that I am a rune reader. It gives me a very good idea of how fate works and how to communicate with people and how to sort of describe heathenry to them and kind of introduce them to the path. And I do know that through my own experiences using the runes, that I have done some private lessons, and I have introduced the runes to people who were very unfamiliar with them. They knew about, they felt connected to cold places. They've seen the symbols, they found them cool and stuff. And they kind of feel an attachment to that sort of vibe, but that's the furthest they really dabbled in. But when they start learning about the runes, they catch on really fast, and then, well, not all of them obviously, but some of the people that have actually taken the class, because you'll notice that a lot of people that don't have sort of a drive to learn won't even attempt in the first place. They'll watch a video or maybe read a few chapters in a book, and then they'll just put it down and just be like, meh, I'll get back to my regular secular life, where I just buy Starbucks, go to work, and go on dates with my significant other. That's fine if that's those are the only things that fulfill you. Then by all means, you're a happy person with so little things to feel something spiritual in your life, and that's totally fine. But or maybe the runes and heathenry isn't for you anyway. Maybe that's just not the path for you. So, perfectly understandable. But, usually those people don't even come to me. Usually the people that come to me are the people that, have an interest and sort of have a knack for these things, people that are genuinely, they feel connected. So this person, I'll remain unnamed. He went to the rune class with me. He sat down in front of me, and we discussed what I do as I go through some sort of meditation, a trance when I'm teaching about the runes. There's only so much you can do when you're just sitting there and you're just like, oh, this rune means that, blah blah blah. It's associated with this. I know it's kind of different for everyone, but at the same time, we can agree, as a modern healing community, sort of universal meanings for the runes. But obviously, we can get into that, So I was, explaining the runes, their background and such, and he had come for a reading, I think, prior, so he was, he's familiar with how I work with them and what they mean, and he was just kind of like, whoa, no, actually, he came to a ritual. You see, I was hosting a ritual to Odin, and for some reason that night he knew he had to be at that ritual. He never met me, he had never worshipped Odin before, but he saw the advertisement and he was like, huh, maybe I should, and then he saw a sign, and I'll keep that private to him, but he saw a sign, where he felt a connection to Odin, and almost saw him in a way, and that for some reason he had to come to this ritual, and so he did come to this ritual. And I'll describe how I do my rituals in future videos, for a video on ritual, but the way I did it, and the way he experienced it, he felt very connected to it, and he was like, whoa, like, for some reason, and I felt like I had to come here, and I did, and I'm so happy I did. And so after the ritual, we got together with the rest of the people, and we had mead, which was used during the ritual. The meat I use is Viking's blood. In my opinion, that's the only good meat out there. Probably one of the oldest recipes we know. So another reason why I like it so much. And it's made from Danish honey. So, close to the area where the Norsemen used to be. But basically is the area where they were. But, Scandinavia, Northern Europe in general. But yeah, so after that, he was like, you know what, I wanna take one of your classes, and so he took my class, and um, he and I learned from each other, and that's what I really love about kinsmen and kindreds and tribes, and sort of that group mentality, feeling connected, feeling almost like we can reflect off of each other. So he and I would sit in the room, and I would play my drum, and I would create a beat for the particular rune we were focusing on. I would kind of try to project the meaning through my drum, through what I was playing, trying to capture the atmosphere of what the rune means. And so he like, let's say we're doing Fehu, and the way I understand Fehu is cattle, wealth, especially in a modern context, it'd be the rune of money, the rune of financial stability, the rune of overall physical prosperity, a rune of birth. It's the first rune of the Futhark, so it's a very heavy rune focused around beginnings, and so that's what I was focusing on while I was playing this drum. No words, no nothing, just playing. Occasionally I use vocals, but what I was mainly trying to do was tap into the space and tap into this other person and capture the meaning of the rune. And what happened during this meditation is he got it, straight up. He got all these runes I went through, and his, what he saw in his mind and what he felt, was almost uncannily exactly, how I see the rune and how I feel the rune. And I had never really been acquainted with this guy before the ritual, so I was just kind of like, wow, this guy, he really feels connected to it. And after that, we took the whole course, learned all three families. And, after that, he and I were, good friends, shared information, spiritual information, and, just kept in touch overall. But, there have been people, that just kind of click. And, this is because, this is something that they've been waiting for, something that they've been looking for. And it's really beautiful to see that. But yeah, so the runes have power, for one. Two, in my opinion, I've heard others say it, but I'm speaking from my point of view in this channel. I believe the runes themselves are beings of their own. Yes, that already applies. Since our tradition is animistic, everything kind of has a spirit of its own. Everything around us kind of has some sort of a sway in how things are, at least a consciousness in a way. Personally, I don't believe these walls around me have their own consciousness. Maybe they do, but for example, definitely a whole forest has consciousness, like a tree. Spirits live in these trees. Spirits live in these stones. It's animism. We reach into all these physical objects around us, and we tap into a spiritual being within all of them. This is our animistic world accepting ideology, to sort of believe in these things and recognize them, because all over the world, these animistic pagan cultures, we're animists, this pre-Christian notion of world accepting behavior and world accepting belief. A world accepting religion is one that doesn't deny this physical plane, saying like when we die, all that matters is the world after. No, you got to walk into this tradition wanting to live life. And that's what you got to do. You got to come into this tradition wanting to live life, and with the intention of living an honorable life and living a fulfilled life that serves you and the people in your tribe, the people that you care for. That's essentially the heathen point of life. And then when you die, you go to the underworld, and then after that you're distributed to whatever great hall you belong, if you believe it so, or you just stay in hell with your ancestors. And for those of you that haven't watched my previous videos, hell and heathenry is not a bad place. Hell is a term that was incorporated into European Christianity, in order to, one of the many ways to convert the populace, the indigenous people of Europe, so that they would not recognize hell as well, mainly we're talking about like the English, more Northern European people, Germanic people. They try to convince them that hell was a bad place, so that's why they started to call, Infernum hell, with two L's, but whatever, hell is the bad place, and maybe with the ancient Greeks, they started calling Hades, they started to call hell Hades, but if I'm correct, I don't think in Greek Orthodox Christianity and Greek Orthodox Christianity, you can correct me if you're a Greek Orthodox Christian, but I don't think there's the same concept of hell as there is in Western Europe, because I think when the two empires split, the Eastern Empire believed that when you die and you're punished in death, you are so close to God, that you feel like you don't deserve it, like it's overwhelming almost. Well, exactly overwhelming, so it's too much to handle. But for a Western Latinized Christian Catholic, it would be an infernum. You'll go to the underworld and you'll burn for eternity. The underworld is just the underworld in heathenry. It's the afterlife. It's where all the dead go, gods, spirits, mortals. We all go to the underworld. Well, at least that could have been the ancient idea. But after a while, it became more incorporated with the Christian hell due to the conversion. Well, yeah, I do believe that some afterlives could be in the heavens, in the earth, all around us. That is a world accepting religion. So everything is incorporated. That's the idea. We aren't denying the earth, we aren't denying the heavens, and we're definitely not denying the underworld. Heathenry is a world accepting religion. Anyway, I think I've exhausted that enough. Might as well be a video on that. But no, we'll get back to the runes and we'll get back to fate. So the reason why I believe the runes are alive, based on animism, is because the runes, they have power. Yes, like everything in a way has power, but in my opinion and through my own experiences, I believe the runes themselves are gods in their own right. They are powerful ancient beings that Odin discovered, he didn't create. I think somewhere in the Eddas it says that there was a Jotun that carved the runes, but I'm not sure. I would believe it, like let's say the runes were created by a Jotun, but they're still gods within themselves because gods were created or given life by other gods. So it's just kind of like, maybe that's it. But maybe the story in the Edda is wrong, then we also don't know that. But say this Jotun created the runes. I forget whose father it was. I think, I'm not even gonna guess. For some reason, I was thinking Freyja or Frigg, but Freyja's father is Njord, and Frigg, if we're talking about the mythology where Frigg and Freyja are split, I think somewhere it says that Frigg's father created the runes, but I'm not sure. I don't know. But yeah, so the runes, the Jotuns are ancient beings older than the Aesir and Vanir, so I'm thinking that wouldn't be too far off that the runes were created by primordial beings, because the runes themselves in the mythology are seen as primordial. But the reason why they're so important, in my opinion, is because not only do they help you navigate fate and Orlog, the web of weird, but they also kind of help you understand heathenry as a whole, in my opinion, like sort of the philosophical overview of heathenry, like concepts of fertility and what it means, feminine energy and goddess, wisdom, godly wisdom and masculinity, friendship and joy, fire, ice, water, deeper knowledge, ancestors, inheritance. There's a rune for everything, to be honest. And the way these runes describe life, from my own experiences, they perfectly describe heathenry, almost perfectly, since we don't have, a lot of information. And, we could all be wrong in the end, but who knows? The point I'm trying to make is, for me, it definitely, and others can argue the same thing, that it helps understand and learn more about heathenry, more quickly grasp the philosophy, because you're coming from a heavily Christianized, hardcore, world-denying religion, and then, you think, there's just one truth, and, the physical world is just this limited box that, some one true God controls, and if you don't serve him, then you go to an even worse place. I don't know. It's just everything is bad that is physical, and everything that is good is non-physical. Is the overall idea. Hold on. Plug in my computer. Battery's dying. There we go. But yes. So the way I can make a separate video about Galder, but another way fate works with the runes is, not only are they used for divination, but whenever I read the runes, the way I understand fate, the way I understand Orlog and Weird, is that it's a web, obviously. Orlog is a web, and there's different strands, different fibers, different directions you can go, and depending on which direction you go, certain things will affect you a certain way, and down certain paths, some things won't even affect you at all. But the point of that is to cast the runes so you know what's up ahead, so you know what choice to make. But the only reason why I think that is because when I cast the runes, well, besides the fact that runes are used for divination, and that is used intentionally to, foresee things, predict things, but the reason why I think that goes hand in hand with fate, besides that obvious fact, is that whenever I cast the runes, there's always two different roads, at least two. Sometimes there's just a blunt yes or no. Sometimes it's, I'll show you how I cast the runes, but when I cast them, I actually cast them, I throw them, on a white cloth, the way it's described by Tacitus, when he went to Germania, this Roman scholar. The way he described the Germanic people with their runes was as cutting them from a fruit-bearing tree into separate little pieces, putting the runes on them, the markings, as he called them, and then throwing them on a white cloth, and then interpreting what they mean. And that's what I do. I don't throw them all at random, but I do reach into my bag, like a lot of divinators do with the runes, and pull them out, but I don't, choose how many I pull out. I just feel how many I pull out. Whenever, excuse me, when a lot of people pull them out, they do it in, tarot format, and that's not something I go with, not at all. But when a lot of people do, being inspired by tarots, they try to do tarot layouts, like the 3-card layout or the Celtic cross or something. Sometimes I do, but not anymore. But I used to do the 3-rune layout a lot, or the 5-rune layout, usually because it meant the problem at hand. You pull one rune for the problem, you pull one rune for the solution, you pull one rune for the outcome or something like that. But no. For me, after a while, I felt much more comfortable throwing the runes on a cloth. And, for a while I have been doing that. Most of the time I've been studying the runes, I've been throwing them on a cloth at random, but not completely at random. I use my intuition, and that's another thing that's very important with divination as a whole, is intuition. You feel around, how many runes does it feel right to pull out? Do you feel a pulse? Do you feel an extra warmth? And which ones do you need to pull out? Your intuition will tell you all of that. You just got to trust your gut. That's the idea. Pull those runes out, and then sometimes there's 3, oftentimes there's 3, sometimes there's 5, sometimes there's 6. You throw them, and then after that, I see at least 2, when it comes to 2 different paths, if it's not just giving me a blunt answer, it'll give me 2 paths, with different runes on either side. Sometimes one path will have 1 rune, and then one path will have another, more runes, 3 runes or something. And it doesn't always happen like this. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes there's more than 2 paths, sometimes there's 1 path. But what you do is you look at either side, And what I do is I basically talk about all the runes that are faced up. Sometimes the runes are face down, sometimes they're upside down, but facing up. And I do interpret the reversed runes. I do interpret them. Some people don't. I definitely interpret the reversed runes as, the more negative side of the meaning. Like if it's Fehu, right side up means prosperity, stability, financial stability. But if it's reversed, it's financial instability, sort of a block in, your financial life. But usually when the runes are reversed, there's always like a solution. And that's what I mean by different paths. If you take the solution, you'll go down a different path. Hope isn't lost. Sometimes the runes won't give you sort of hope in a way, in a sense. Like if something is really bad is going to happen and they tell you, and you don't see any extra runes, try to, but some of them might be face down. Like some of them are face down, and that's why I'm going to say most of the time, if not all the time, the runes always have a solution. If there's something bad going on, another rune says, but you could try this and make that not happen, or make that happen less severely. I could give you an example. It's about relationships. That's probably one of the biggest questions I get a lot. Relationships. This guy's giving me weird signals. Should I be with him? Should I not? This woman, vice versa. And then, Debo showed up, and it's like, that, it's talking about that exchange between lovers, that back and forth. And then, but Wunya was reversed. So it's kind of like saying like, but, you guys wouldn't work as friends. So at the same time, there's that delay. Like you kind of have that basic law figured out, the give and receive, but, you're not quite there. Your friendship is a little in the mud per se. There's no joy there. But then, in the left-hand corner, Ansu's is there all alone, but it's not upside down. It's right side up, and it's facing up. Basically saying if you work on your communication, things will turn out for the better. Maybe your friendship can be more stable. And that's probably one of the best explanations I can give you for how I do a rune reading. It's not always going to be cut and dry like that, but there's always a problem. Well, there's not always a problem. Sometimes there's no problem. The runes are just like, yeah, you're doing great. Keep it up. Just, maybe don't do this. There's always, most of the time there's like a negative and then a positive and a solution, or just all negative and a solution. It's, take this way or that way. This will happen if you go that way. This will happen if you go this way. And essentially that's how I understand and how I divinate the runes. And I do believe the runes speak for themselves a lot of the time, if not most of the time, because I do believe the runes themselves are beings in their own right, spirits, and that's why they're so powerful and why they're so significant. They essentially were, very heavily used in the Viking era and before, carved in stones everywhere, used for magic, and that's where I go into Galder. Excuse me. But that'll be a future video, when I'm talking about how to use the runes for magic. I'm talking about how the runes incorporate to fate. So, you could say fate and magic are the same, but then again, I'd call fate a greater magic, something that's very important. Not so much a tool, but an important blueprint to our cosmos. Sort of to organize life and death, to organize what happens and what doesn't happen and how it happens. And it's up to us, all these beings in this cosmos, to direct, go along for the ride, and make sure things don't happen, badly for us. It's life. So bad things will happen. Sometimes we won't foresee them, because we can't always just cast the runes and just be like, blah, 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 this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. Maybe we can, but we don't have that time. And maybe sometimes the runes won't even want to talk to you. Sometimes that does happen. But most of the time, they have something to say. I'd have to say that. I have to say that most of the time there's always something useful for them to tell you. If you just pull one out, of the bag, or you throw it on the white cloth at random with multiple runes, There's always something they have to say, most of the time. I can also tell you that I don't believe for 1 second that they will ever deceive you. And if you ever have been deceived by the runes, tell me in the comments, because that would be a new thing for me. I don't think they're deceivers. I do think that sometimes we can interpret them wrong. Like sometimes we can, like we think it says one thing, but we aren't taking a certain rune into account, and then later on, like I'll be thinking about the reading and like what runes come up, and I'm like, oh shit, it meant that, and it makes so much more sense now. But most of the time it's usually face value, the answers and how you go about them. But a lot of the time I will later on find, my mind will like I'll think of a rune that showed up in the reading, and then my mind will think about more meanings that are attached to that reading. But yeah, so I pretty much talked the runes to death, and now moving on to Fate. Fate, Orlog. The way it's understood is Orlog is, this greater force. It's not a god, it's not a being, a personality. Maybe it is a being per se. Maybe it has a personality, but we don't know. The idea is that, it's not seen as this all-powerful god. It's seen as this structure. Again, it's animism. Everything has a consciousness in a way. Everything is, has some sort of way of reasoning and doing things. And that's, essentially what Orlog is. And Orlog doesn't work alone, though. You see, it's served by the 3 Norns, the sisters, among other Norns. And I did mention other Norns in my past videos, which would be a number of Valkyries, if not all the Valkyries, Freyia, Frigg, if you worship Frigga separately, and a number of other entities in the cosmology that practice Seidr. And Seidr is understood as the art of weaving destiny, the art of shamanic journeying, the art of clairvoyance, opposed to the runes, which are an art of clairvoyance, but they're more focused on answering questions and performing spells and creating talismans rather than being used directly to enter shamanic ritual, shamanic trance / journeying, and so on and so forth. But so Seidr, the Norns, multiple beings besides the Norns, weave fate, and they can foretell the future. It's not saying that only the Norns can foretell the future. It's not saying that Orlog, just can't be meddled with and can't be, touched. But it does, fate can be changed, but the past can't be altered. That's the idea. And, that's literally a literal explanation to why we can't change the past now. A literal scientific explanation for that is that it's already happened, And the heathen or spiritual explanation for that would be that there is only the present moment. This is the only thing that exists right now. You watching this video right now is the only moment that exists. Everything else before it contributed to what we're experiencing right now, but it doesn't exist anymore, if that makes any sense. And then the future is still being weaved by the Norns, and it is still being decided by Orlog. And Orlog is essentially the fate distributor, the person or the being that the source that creates the web, and then the Norns essentially weave it. They grab the string that the Orlog created, and they weave it together into the greater web that is connected to all living things. And when that happens, a number of things can be foretold and seen. The fate of humans, the fate of gods, the fate of monsters, the fate of the world itself. So many possibilities and things that can happen are woven in this web. And it's up to us to navigate this web. And if we go down a wrong route, we could end up getting our cords snipped, just like you've probably seen in Hercules. Again, I wouldn't use the movie Hercules as a historical reference at all, but, just for an example, the ancient Greeks, they in the Romans, they believed in the Fates, the three sisters that wove destiny. Same thing, as the Northern Germanic people, except what we do know about the Norse idea of destiny is that it's far more complicated than that. We have this understanding of karma that is Orlog. In the way Orlog works is it's bound together through not only the choices we make but our deeds. So the idea is that we are not punished in some afterlife. We are punished in this life. This is our punishment, but it's also our gift, if that makes any sense. With everything, there is a pro and then there's a con. Light and dark, a balance. And that's a thing you'll see a lot in my videos while talking about heathenry as a whole. There's a balance of light and a balance of dark. Some beings are darker than the others, like the Jotuns, and some are more focused on stability and order, like the Aesir or the Vanir. But all of them have an important role, just like Surt, who is this Lord of Muspelheim, the Lord of the Fire Giants, older than Ymir himself, who was, the first being. And even he is important, despite the fact that his destiny is literally to set this world ablaze and to destroy the world tree, so Ragnarok can essentially be finished. But then again, his role is important because that allows this old world to die so the next world can be reborn. It's a constant pattern throughout nature, and that's what can be applied to ancient spirituality, because ancient spirituality is emphasized and focused on the concepts and philosophies of nature. So there you go. But yeah, so fate, Orlog, karma. The reason why I draw the two to be similar is because, yes, your deeds are affected, but what also makes it different is the fact that Orlog can affect your future generations, not just your particular life. There's a heavy emphasis on individuality in Hinduism. Excuse me. When it comes to your fate and how you die and all that, I do believe there is some truth to that. Like your individual path is important. We all die alone, but in the afterlife, we are not alone, is what I do believe. But, when we do die alone, we go through life alone, despite the people that care for us and are with us. We may have a strong kindred or a strong clan or tribe or family, which is essentially the same thing. We are still going to die alone, and we are still going to, suffer our own way. And that's because we are our own minds. We are our own Hugi. We have control over these things, but at the same time, there are some things we don't have control over. And a lot of the time, those are things that we deal with alone and nobody else deals with. And a lot of that is also your spiritual journey. Your own personal connection to the gods is your own. But the whole reason why you have a tribe is because all the people in your tribe connect to those gods in at least a similar way, or, they understand you at a deeper level. So, what essentially happens in Orlog is not only do you get affected when you do a bad deed, but your whole tribe gets affected because they are bound to you by Orlog. You have made them family. You have made them your blood in a spiritual sense. And then they have contributed to you and vice versa. But you decided one day to not contribute to them. You decided to break your oath to the tribe, and then you ended up joining some other tribe, or you ended up killing somebody in your tribe. I'm not saying you would do that, but let's say you do. You kill somebody in your tribe. You swore not to harm, hurt, or maim any of your tribal members, and you still did. And you're fucked, because not only do you have the tribe on your ass and they hate you, but you're also affecting the whole tribe, and you're affecting your own family, because when you break this oath, or and that's another thing that seemed to be very heavily important in the sagas, was the art of oath, and as well as the mythology, the gods and the mortals that give their oath to the tribe or to the gods or something important. When they break it, there tends to be heavy calamity and you tend to get punished in this life. Trust me. In my own personal experiences, I felt that. Like, you know you did wrong and it's coming back to you in this life. But if not, it'll come back to you in another life, a future life. And then that life could very well be the life of your descendants. It could be the life of your great-great-grandson, who's adorable. His name is Axel. He plays baseball, and he has a lot of friends, and he has a good future for him. But great-granddaddy Vladimir decided to, sorry for these weird, outrageous names, but great-granddaddy Vladimir decided to kill his wife or cousin or something. And so this is reflected on the future generations. And so if you believe in these things and you have a shitty life, you can definitely blame your ancestors. That's all I'm going to say. Is there things you can do about it for yourself? I agree. I definitely think you can. But I think that takes a lot of building and a lot of reconstruction. If you dishonored your tribe in a past life, in this life, you have to make a new tribe and you have to rebuild that trust, and you have to rebuild your Orlog and your Hummingya, and that's another part of it. Hummingya essentially is your accumulated luck, and whenever you do something shitty, or if you do something really good, it comes back to you. That's the law of Gibo, the law of give and receive. Another reason why I consider learning the runes very helpful when understanding heathenry and the concept of fate. There's a give and then there's a receive. And if you don't give back when you receive, damn right expect some sort of misfortune or some sort of downfall. Sometimes it can be brutal as hell. I'm sure you've heard people say, excuse my language, karma is a bitter bitch or a vindictive bitch or something like that. Orlog is the same way, but Orlog isn't some afterlife punishment. It's in this life, and it can happen in another life, and it can affect your future generations that you could very well be guiding yourself. Maybe you decided to, have a burial mound for your family or your kindred in the back of your great hall or something, or your house, and you decide to bury yourself in it so you can watch over your descendants, so you can come back from the underworld to see your family, and so that you can, just sort of make sure they're fine. But there's a problem. The Hummingya, the luck you accumulated for your great-great-grandson is not working because you fucked up. And so either they have to figure it out on their own, or maybe, I don't know how it works in death, to be honest, but maybe you have to work extra hard for something you did to fuck up your family. So essentially the idea is to not dishonor the people that you care for, and the idea is to not, break your oaths and to not, essentially swear up and down about something that, you're clearly not going to do. Sometimes you'll think you'll do it, and then you don't. That's called a big fuck up. But, the point is to avoid it. Even the gods themselves have broken oaths. They have caused trouble, mischief, murder. And that, again, not only reflects the fact that the gods, the pagan gods, are a lot like us, in a way more relatable, but, they too are aware of the fact that Orlog, affects everything, and the fact that Orlog, is, it's going to hit you back if you keep making the same mistake over and over again. So it's, Orlog essentially is karma, but with a twist, a Nordic twist, as I like to say. So yeah, don't doom your generation, don't doom your kindred. Make sure everything is known in your group. Heathen kindreds are definitely underrated, and I think a lot of people go into the path, myself included, having to be a very individual journey, but I don't blame that at all. Not just because that's how I essentially developed, but the fact that a lot of heathens don't have other heathens. Like, a lot of people don't have that clan or that tribe I'm talking about. it's hard. It's hard to find people that are devotedly heathen and will join you and do rituals with you and celebrate the seasons with you and share all their deepest secrets with you and essentially stand side by side with you. It's a lot to ask for in this day and age because it's so hard to find devoted people who are actually into this. I mean, I know numbers are growing, and the rising amount of heathen content distributors is definitely proof of that, and as well as statistics. But it's still a slow moving process, and so was the rise of Christianity. So it was just kind of like, it's you're alone for a time, and that's completely understandable. I'm still alone to an extent. I do have a kindred, but a lot of them aren't anywhere near me. I know it does put a penalty on sort of that bond, that tribal bond, that genuine connection. But for me, these are people I've met in person. Most of them I've shared a drink with them. I've shared a fire with them. I've gone to school with some of them. Like I know them. And I'm very close to them. So distance doesn't really tarnish me. It just makes things harder, and it doesn't ruin our connection, but it does suck. So I would definitely recommend you find people that you can connect to and practice with you, and definitely stick to that group. There is no reason for a tribe to get too big unless you truly trust these people and feel connected to these people. Otherwise, it's just a thing, an all thing, as they say, a gathering. You're getting together, you're discussing things. Maybe there's a ritual, universally respected ritual, and you're all just together, you're talking, you're partying, you're sharing disputes and concerns. That's a thing. And, I've had those before. And usually that's not a tribal gathering. Usually it's a gathering of multiple tribes, especially if it's an all thing. But yeah, so Orlog, Fate, Hummingya, and the runes, in my opinion, definitely go hand in hand. Learn the runes to better organize and navigate your destiny. That would definitely be my recommendation. But yeah, so it's good to learn about Orlog. It's good to learn about Hummingya and Weird and the Norns. Definitely do your own research on that. Take what I say with a grain of salt until you're sure that you trust what I say. And just look into it overall. Find out what fate means to you, and what your destiny is in this world as a heathen, slash, what you want your destiny to be as a heathen. And study those runes if you feel compelled to. It's not for everybody, like I said, just like heathenry as a whole, just like, many parts of heathenry, and, not for everybody. But, if you feel connected, please pursue it. Trust your gut, trust your mind. And yeah, without any further ado, that's all I have. I think my next video will dabble more into the subject of rune magic. I'm not sure, but definitely stay tuned for future videos, and I look forward to the next one. Thank you, and please enjoy.